Imagine paying $3,500 for your next iPhone. Sounds crazy? That's exactly where we're headed if one man has his way. President Donald Trump just threw down the gauntlet, calling out Apple CEO Tim Cook and demanding that all iPhones be made in the USA. His message? Make America great again doesn't include building tech empires abroad, but what Trump sees as betrayal. Apple calls survival. This clash isn't just corporate drama. It's the front line of a new economic Cold War. America's biggest tech titan is caught in a tug-of-war between political populism and global pragmatism. Buckle up. This is the battle of Apple versus Trump, and the future of global manufacturing is on the line. It all kicked off with a jab that felt more like a body slam. At an event in Qatar, Trump lashed out at Tim Cook, warning, "We're not interested in you building in India." A not-so-subtle shot at Apple's plan to move a huge chunk of iPhone production overseas. This isn't just rhetoric. Trump is revving his America First engine again, and Apple is right in his headlights. Their history? Complicated. Tim Cook was once called Tim Apple by Trump himself after lobbying to shield Apple from trade war tariffs. But today, any goodwill is running on fumes. Apple plans to make more than 25% of its iPhones in India by 2026. For Trump, that's economic betrayal. For Cook, it's business logic. Because let's face it, building iPhones isn't just about waving the stars and stripes. It's about navigating a fragile web of suppliers, tariffs, and political minefields. Apple doesn't pick factories based on patriotism. It picks what works. And right now, what works isn't in America. Which brings us to the new golden child in Apple's supply chain, India. Apple's pivot to India wasn't a rash decision. It was years in the making, backed by spreadsheets, risk assessments, and global supply chain headaches. Since 2020, India has rolled out the red carpet. Government incentives, labor availability, and a manufacturing-friendly push under Prime Minister Modi have turned India into the next big production hub. And it's working fast. By early 2025, India was churning out 14% of the world's iPhones. Over 3 million Indian-made iPhones hit U.S. shelves in just 1 month. That's not a test run. That's full throttle. Suppliers like Foxconn and Pegatron have secured over $1 billion in subsidies to build up Indian operations. And Indian conglomerate Tata Electronics? It's fast becoming a key player in the Apple machine. But here's the twist. India isn't China. Not yet. Apple still needs to import many parts into India. The supplier network just isn't as deep. Roads are improving, but logistics remain rough. It's progress, but it's patchwork. And that opens the door to uncertainty. And Trump sees that weakness. He's not just talking. He's gearing up for tariffs. His message to Apple, come home or pay the price. But building iPhones in America? That's where things get messy and expensive. So let's say Trump gets what he wants. Apple ditches India and builds iPhones right here in the USA. Sounds patriotic, right? Now, take a breath, because that $1,000 iPhone in your pocket, it would now cost over $3,500. No, that's not a typo. American labor isn't cheap. Manufacturing wages in the US are many times higher than in India or Vietnam. But it's not just about the paycheck. It's the whole ecosystem. America doesn't have the scale, the factories, or the supplier networks needed for high-volume, high-precision electronics like smartphones. Think about what it takes to make one iPhone. Hundreds of tiny components, most sourced from a global web of suppliers: Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, China. Relocating all of that to the U.S. would be like trying to rebuild the world's busiest airport in the middle of a cornfield and expecting it to run on time. Tim Cook knows this. That's why he's not defying Trump. He's driving defensively. Apple's entire business model runs on sleek efficiency. Force it into a clunky, overpriced setup, and you don't just slow down. You crash. Hard. That's the real reason Cook is betting on India. Not because it's cheaper, but because the alternative is economically suicidal. Still, India is no paradise either. India is having its moment. Apple's vote of confidence is a global endorsement, and Modi's government is riding high on the wave of electronics exports. But under the hood, the engine's still sputtering. Yes, India is pumping out millions of iPhones. But much of that is still basic assembly. The brainpower, the high-value components, still come from overseas. That means India isn't fully self-reliant. Not yet. The roads are better. The power grid is more stable. But there are still bumps. Land acquisition is messy. Tax rules change without warning. And customs delays can snarl supply lines for weeks. Then there's the risk of over-reliance. Apple now accounts for a huge share of India's electronics exports. If Apple moves even part of its production to another country, say Vietnam or Mexico, it could leave India with idle factories and dashed expectations. Still, India is not standing still. Tata is becoming a local powerhouse. Global players are investing. And trade talks with the U.S. are in full swing, aimed at locking in long-term cooperation. But time is ticking. To truly rival China, India needs more than foreign factories. It needs to build its own ecosystem. One that doesn't just assemble the iPhone, but owns the chips, the glass, the innovation. If it doesn't move fast enough, someone else will. And right now, Trump is adding more pressure. Trump's trade engine is revving again. And this time, it's not China he's targeting. It's India. With Apple moving production there, Trump's playbook is simple. Slap tariffs on Indian-made devices to force Apple back to U.S. soil. The message? You can outsource and still cash in on American consumers. But India isn't rolling over. Behind closed doors, its trade negotiators are working overtime, trying to avoid a tariff tsunami. A new deal with Washington could soften the blow. But Trump's not known for subtlety or for playing nice. And Apple? It's not waiting around. Tim Cook has already lit the fuse on another backup plan, Vietnam. MacBooks, iPads, even Apple Watches, production is shifting south. Apple's message is crystal clear. No one country will ever control our supply chain again. It's not about patriotism anymore. It's about survival in a world where one tweet can shake markets and one tariff can cost billions. Apple is turning its supply chain into a fortress, flexible, resilient, and spread across borders. Because in this new era, geopolitics isn't just noise in the background. It's the battlefield. So, where does that leave us? A political firestorm, a supply chain arms race, and a tech giant trying to thread the needle between efficiency and nationalism. Trump's push for U.S. jobs is loud and emotional, but the numbers don't lie. A made-in-America iPhone is a $3,500 iPhone. And that's before we talk about timelines, training, or building new factories from scratch. India is rising, but it's still learning how to walk the manufacturing tightrope. One misstep, and the momentum could vanish. Apple knows it can't afford to sit still. That's why it's building a global maze of factories, not for domination, but for defense. Against politics, against tariffs, against the chaos of a world in flux. So here's the real question. Can any country, any policy, or any president really tell Apple where to build its future? We want to hear what you think. Is Apple smart to hedge its bets across India and Vietnam? Or should it take the patriotic path and build in the U.S., no matter the cost? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk strategy, supply chains, and the power plays shaping the devices we use every day. This is Global Pulse, where tech meets geopolitics, and the future is always in motion. Stay sharp, stay curious, and we'll see you in the next one.